Bits of trivia about the female anatomy. Hello!
Why, hi. I assumed that was the worst time to walk in. How are we, everybody?
We're doing okay.
We went from talking about Trump supporters to talking about ovulation to talking about how if you remove one ovary, the fallopian tube will slinky over to the other one.
If you remove a fallopian tube, the other fallopian tube will move back and forth between the ovaries.
Ah, okay.
And I'm sure that feels lovely when it happens.
Well,
I don't know.
On a lighter note, I was telling Miriam and Sophia before you two arrived, but I found a pile of Lyrica in our driveway, or parking lot rather, that wasn't ours. So I don't know how it got there. But yeah, it was like 60 pills.
okay. Is Lyrica used or abused for anything fun?
Oh yes, it's very abused.
Yeah, it's a control. It's
I think it's
typically
C3.
used for typically used for neuropathy, but it has other uses too. That's just the most common one.
If you've ever
At least
heard
in
of
my pharmacy.
Yeah, if you've ever heard of Neurontin or gabapentin as the generic,
Yeah.
it's basically a stronger version of that.
Okay. All right. Well,
Is it good with booze or not?
Not really that type of pain medication.
As a pharmacist, I do not recommend that. Please don't mix any CNS depressant agents.
Bob,
Oh, too late.
You don't know what you're
he
missing.
did that ages ago. Back when I first met him, in fact. He has some stories.
well, I am normally not curious as to those stories. I may be very, very shortly. I recently had to, well, today, as a matter of fact, had to go in for a bit of a dentistry. Normally, me and the dentist don't get along because it takes an extraordinarily amount of numbing agent and freezing and several other things for me to almost not feel the efforts. I was hoping today would be different. It was not, in fact, different at all. So, I am.
Oh no!
I am extraordinarily sore, to put it lightly, and yeah, it's been a day. All in all, welcome everybody. Do we have any questions as to where we left our characters?
I might need a recap. I recall that we had died for the day, and I remember Lucio was talking with Forcipules, and is that how you pronounce it, by the way?
Well, it's Forcipules, there's Forcipules, it is Forcipiles. There are several different pronunciations, so whichever one works better for you.
Okay, so the centipede demon was speaking with him. I think Miriam was making a deal with the Voivod of the North. I don't remember
Yes.
what Hestia and Sophia were doing, though.
Yes, Sophia, Miriam managed to incite Rick Mod into all but declaring official and open war. It will very much be all of those things, but he hasn't actually declared it openly. But yeah, there is a hell coming, and he's coming with it. And Hestia, no, yeah, I did say Hestia. Hestia is in the midst of negotiating several alliances, and the same thing for Sophia. And everyone was rushing there at the end to try to get back together to share the information and get something operationally sound as your base. While the myriad of forces that you all have the ability to reach out to and poke and prod into a particular incitement is surprisingly well rounded. It is a surprising number of individuals who have or could be manipulated into assaulting the efforts of Mama Hugo, either directly, indirectly, or a mix of the two. So there's a lot of irons in the fire. What becomes of that will come down to you all. Did I bury the lead there a little bit?
No, you're good, I think.
Yeah, because last time I remember, Hess had finished up her meeting and gotten an Uber and was headed back towards Miriam, but just missed Miriam's guest.
Oh, we have so much to discuss.
There is a... If you'll hold for 1 second, please.
I was just about to say tonight is feet, but then I remembered how that sounded and should correct that and say tonight I'm crocheting the feet to make it more clear.
This is the oh god, why can't I remember the name? The storytelling bunny, is that right?
The Barracorn, yeah.
The Bearcorn, that's right. Oh my.
Right, sorry about that. Yeah, so do we have any questions, suggestions, hypotheses, or quarters we need to round off? Do you think we're all caught up to where we are currently?
I think so.
I suggest that Mama Hugo cut herself shaving and bleed out.
That is potentially possible. They are relatively living and active. They've cheated death once again. There's a lot of potential there. So, without too much...
Would this be?
What was that?
I was gonna say, would this be the third time that she's cheated death?
Yes. Yes, indeed. There is a penchant for doing so. And their bloods call on necromancy and dealing with the world beyond only seems to add fuel to that particular fire. So, without further delay, without much further ado, I'd like to thank you all for being here. It really means a lot. The time that we share, it is one of the highlights of my week, and it's grown on me in significant ways. It is the foundation for a lot of everything else that I do. So, thank you, and thank you. And this is officially Soup City Sins, Season 15, season finale. Dick's two Roman pilgrims with Joe's child. When we last left our coterie, alliances were being trotted out. Decisions were being made. Deals agreed upon, or at least not thrown out with the bathwater. There are a lot of pokers in the fire and a lot of angles that the coterie is working on. Currently under the unofficial aegis of the Familia Hakata. Currently relatively free from their just desserts at the hands of the tower. The coterie are bent dedicatedly to ensuring that Mama Hugo's plans don't reach fruition, which is an honorable aim and a seemingly well thought out purpose. There's several problems with that ideology, and there's several problems with that tact. The truth of the matter is, and the part that none of the coterie members have really come to grips with in this moment, is that while they have hints and assumptions, and they have glimpses of what could be Mama Hugo's goal, no one knows exactly what her plan is. No one's considered the efforts taken by someone or something so dedicated to achieving their goal that they would laugh in the face of death, that they would barter with forces infernal to achieve those ends, that they would sacrifice all that they were to ensure that their enemy was no longer a problem to anyone, not just to themselves, but have no mortal way to affect the world at all. Even with their understanding of the dead, even with their understanding that, like attracts like, and all the other many themes of the mystical and magical, even knowing that there are spirits, not just ghosts, not just former living humans, but there are spirits that exist that have a stake in what happens in this world and the next. No one knows what Mama Hugo's actual plan is. They recognize that she is a disease, that she is an evil, that she is something that needed to be cut out or excised. But what that disease does, what its aim is still unknown. So we open with time passing as it always does, with each second spilling into the next minute and into the next hour, and the night petering away far too quickly. Hestia arriving to meet Miriam. Sophia and Lucio finding their way back together. And all heading where? Where would they like to exchange information in a relatively safe space?
Returning to Sophia's apartment seems ideal.
I mean, it makes sense, obviously, since we don't typically, not say you have to worry about what might happen in Chicago, but I mean, the devil you know, right? So at Sophia's house sounds good.
So heading back to Point Due North, heading back to their safe haven away from their haven, heading back to that lap of comfort from a bygone era. Their traffic in Chicago is a contact sport. It is much like most urban areas, compacted and confounded by the sheer volume of persons driving, by the sheer volume of people on the road at all hours of the day and at all hours of the night. The night having the benefit of having fewer persons on the roadways, traffic being considerably lighter. But light traffic means increased speed, increased maneuverability, increased recklessness. So properly harrowed with traveling from point A to point B via point Z, we pick up with the coterie alighting in the elevator roughly around the same time, having arrived seconds from one another. Their conversations having reached relative calm ends, meaning that no one lost their current grip on immortality. Truth of the matter is, there are enemies out there in the world who, just because they say a thing, doesn't mean they mean a thing. And just because they mean it, don't mean they're going to say it. So, gathering back together, because there are a lot of individual information each member has. And sadly, telepathy and the exchange of information mentally is not something that anyone possesses.
Out of curiosity, did Miriam say anything to Hestia when she walked into?
Oh yeah,
Hestia place?
yeah. That would have been a whole conversation before we even got back.
And how would that have sounded?
Well, Hess would walk in the door and it's like, I have some news. You know that meeting I was talking about setting up?
Yeah.
Well, it happened a little sooner than I anticipated. But the Voivode has basically declared that she will be dead soon, and he would like his property back in return. Seems fair.
Wait, so he says it's his.
Well, it is his. It's a thing. Trust me.
What happened to Finders Keepers?
Oh, you don't play that game with old. No. That's life-threatening.
So he's like dragon for real dragon, like Horde, like
Yes.
Lord of the Rings.
I mean, there's some truth to the legend about the dragons, but it doesn't always necessarily mean a treasure. Sometimes it can just be junk or information, a collection that means something to them.
Oh, I mean, I'm all for good riddance. That thing is nothing but trouble. If he wants to get chased by lupines, then cool.
So fabulous. But yes, it was apparently stolen by Wotzik.
That man has some balls on him, bruh.
So yeah. He said 3 days should be done. Then we meet back here.
I mean, that sounds great, and I'm all for it. And yeah, don't want to cross the Voivod of wherever the Voivod is from. But do you really think she's just gonna sit still and let herself be attacked? I mean, she doesn't know he's coming, obviously, but once she figures out something's going on, would you sit still and let everybody come at you?
no.
Remember, this is the woman that married or swapped places with her
Sister.
sister's husband and slept with him for years, pretending to be her sister while pretending to be her nephew's mother. All to get back at somebody.
Family drama.
At this point, can we say that Lucio returns?
Yes.
Okay. Lucio will be walking into the scene, seeing the two conversing, and simply reply, "I'm hoping you have some good news."
Were you coming back to my parlor to get me? Since you dropped me off? Or...
Makes sense if that's where you knew she was last and coming in, so you come in at the tail end of them two talking, and then we all get in the car and head back to Sophia's. Makes sense.
Fabulous. I just want to make sure we're all on the same page, because I got lost for a second.
I may have made a mistake, but let's just roll with it.
Okay. Yes, there has been progress.
On my end as well, apparently. I pulled the wrong string on the wrong sweater, but he is knitting it back together. And it's just best if I leave things as they are. And the shelter will be safe. Perpetuity. So, as long as I don't give it to anybody or I don't die, which he very much stressed, don't die. And, I'll be fine. So on my end, everything's okay.
Excellent. On my end, I was able to convince Forcipulus to aid us in at least antagonizing Daria. He's agreed to aid us at least somewhat, not necessarily deliver the killing blow, but at least to help flush her out.
Which will help your friend, the guy, the Voivod, right? Because
The
he's
Voivod,
going after
yes.
her too. So they can
Yes.
like pincer move.
He did mention a couple things in addition to that. Number one being that he's going to also annoy us because we've pissed him off a few times. Not kill us, not, destroy us or anything, but just annoy us after this is all said and done. And he mentioned something about Wojcik building an army on the other side of the Veil.
Oh, that's not good. We need to tell Sophia that.
Yeah.
Anyways, why don't we get in the car and get
Speaking
headed that
of-
way and talk?
I know Sophia wants your little trinket, but in exchange for help, it needs to go back to the Voivod.
All right. Just tell her that.
Cool.
Which I already agreed to because I said I'd rather not have it anymore because Lupine.
Right.
I admit part of me was tempted to learn more about it, but perhaps we can talk with the Voivod later about that. There are much more pressing matters at hand.
Yes. So like I was telling Hess, he said we would meet back here in 3 days. She should be dead. And he gets his thing. sure she's not going to see that coming. I hope.
Ooh,
Does she have her?
that?
Do you have any? Are there any little friends hanging about anyway? I suppose that's an important consideration.
Little friends? What do you mean?
Whether that be,
You know,
is going
little
to sense
little
the
friends. Didn't you have some shadow watchers at one point?
You mean the Sombra?
Sure. You know, those little things on the other side that were reporting back to people.
No,
Spies.
I never had anything like that.
What's the pool for sentience again? I know it's Auspex, but it's an Auspex?
Give me a quick second. Have to open up a slew of books to get there. Because I
mean, that sounds about right to me. Normally, for that sort of roll, it's like an 8 or a 9 I normally roll, so I'll go with the 8.
it'd be your wits plus auspics.
Yep. So I have a pool of 8 for the wits plus Auspex, and I got 2 successes, and she got like a little bit hungrier.
Sophia, would you be so kind as to roll for me? I can't. Would you be so kind as to roll your resolve plus oblivion for me, please? Chicago is a city that's built, like many urban areas, on the bones of its previous self. And that can be best exemplified by saying that it has built upon the bones of the dead. There are the dead, the dying, that never had been at nearly most places in the world. There are entire fields of dead that have been buried over, paved over, and made into something else in the modern day. Places that were formerly their own cities being absorbed into the whole. Former neighborhoods that, well, were paved over to make additional lakefront property. Hell, there is roughly a fifth of the city's land that was wholly the invention and imagination of the initial city planners that once had been land used for homes and neighborhoods and people and all of the many problems they bring with them. So it is a rarity that the feeling of the dead, for those wary and wily enough to be in absence, that presence of all of the many centuries before, all of the land before, even before the settlers made their home here, even before, Fort Dearborn, even before DuSable's trading store. The place had been an area where local First Peoples would meet to trade in information, to hold peace talks, to negotiate, partially because the scent of wild onions is particularly unpleasant in the wild, especially if you're used to the natural world. So it was an area that everyone knew how to get to. You just close your eyes and follow your nose. It was, and had always been, a vital logistical place because of the fresh water, because of the flowing of the river, because of the lake itself, the great inland sea, as it were. There are and were bodies and tombs and dead that go back centuries. There's a point in almost every movie, in almost every fiction, where someone inadvertently has either longed to say or realizes that they are trotting out a trope with, "It's quiet, too quiet." And while the feeling of the other side is ever present, the feeling of the dead is not. And that sets the hairs on the back of Hestia's neck on end.
So there's like no spirits in the shop at all.
The lack of that feeling is enough to make it eerily quiet.
Hess would get a very perplexed look on their face and go, "Well, good news, bad news. Good news is we have no listeners. Bad news is there are... It's a weird sort of empty. Like it should not be this empty. Kind of like what happened the night that the power stopped flowing to the Haven. It's like that."
So, in other words, completely private.
Yes, that's the good part. Bad part is, why is it that way? Because this is Chicago. You should be like knee deep or neck deep in spirits no matter where you go, pretty much. Don't ever go by the lake and do this, because I swear there's so many of them there. But the point is, your shop should at least have one or two stragglers walking through. There's nobody.
Well, privacy good. Does that relate to the army that Wosik is trying to build on the other side?
Possibly. And Lucio's going to turn on his Oblivion sight just to confirm. Confirm what Hestia found, rather.
Excellent. Would you be so kind as to go ahead and roll your wits plus Oblivion?
Of course. Everyone brace yourselves.
That is not the most warming thing that could have ever happened, but it is by far not the worst. There is
Oh, my poor shop will never be the
Oh
same.
no, it definitely will not. There is a saying that a little knowledge is a dangerous thing. And in the moment of watching all the color fade from Lucio's gaze, watching the stillness of death inhabit him as if he was a glove, things go tragically and horribly wrong. Because while not sensing, not feeling the ethers and ethers of all of the many souls about, being gifted with not having to watch that happen, being gifted with not having to look completely into the veil to tear the shroud, is a gift that, well, just keeps right on giving. Unless, of course, your name is Lucio, at which point, when all of the color fades from his gaze and he goes stock still, looking around them and realizing that things, beings, spirits, and essences are hiding. You didn't know it was possible initially for souls to be aware that they could be viewed and choose to hide. The fact that you see them crouching and melding and standing just inside walls, being kept at bay by central power. You can't even say that it's a soul, because you've never seen such a amalgamation of strength and the lack thereof in one entity, because that makes no sense. How can you be strong and soft? How can you be powerful and easily destroyed? Yet that is what you feel from the wan, thin woman who is hiding by standing inside of one of the many pictures of Disney princesses twisted into their goth version or their emo version or their rock version that are in the perusal wall there. Her face melding almost perfectly with that of a zombified Snow White. Her pale features and wan disposition letting you know that in life she was on the point of starvation, that she lived a very hard life and refused to just lie down and take it, that she took all the pain that was there for her and kept trying to exist. That fight and that strength, that need to hold on to life, shines throughout. And that's when the other shoe drops. Kindred are endless voids of death. They need to be filled. They need to consume. And not for the first time, and hopefully for the last. All of that comes due. Lucio's beast rears up because he realizes that he has seen that face before, that he has seen that presence before, that he has felt that entity close enough to become part of the everyday occurrences around him. He can't remember when he forgot that it was something that stood out about them. He can't remember when he noticed them constantly or felt their presence constantly around. It's a perfume that has hung about him for weeks. And this beast doesn't like being watched, tracked like some wild game. His fangs snapping into place. His undead corded muscles filling with all of his righteous indignation. And while he knows consciously there's nothing he can do, there's no control he can exert over that entity, there's also a very real part of him that knows that if he destroys enough, that the others being held at bay by her proximity may finish the job for him. What is it that he is doing in his moment of complete, illogically logical rage?
Does Lucio know whether or not the arms of Armin can actually grasp a spirit?
One way to find out.
Well then, yeah, he's pissed off enough to try.
Alright.
Out of character, I apologize about the painting, but it's probably going to get messed up.
I mean, it's not a painting. It's This is not going to be good, though.
No, because, well, you know.
Looks like somebody got themselves a stain.
Yep.
Yes, yes. Lovely, lovely stains. All right, so here's the thing. While channeling that, would you be so kind, Miriam, please roll your resolve plus composure. You, after all, are, in fact, a dragon. These are, in fact, mementos that matter to you. And as it is, as long as Lucio does not roll a failure, there is nothing in this room, nothing in this building, including your bodies, that would withstand the sheer force and power of his arms, of Ahriman. There's nothing that they literally wouldn't destroy. He has... Now, is your potence 2 or 3? I forget exactly.
Currently, it's 3.
Oh, yeah. Everything around you, to your tendrils of death, to your specters of oblivion, is in fact tissue paper. Not toilet tissue, but literally just tissue paper. Pack a gift paper. This is, yeah. So as you lash out.
Oh boy. What am I rolling?
Your strength plus oblivion, and add your potence to the result.
So on the bright side, I probably don't frenzy.
On the bright side, you keep your beast from immediately lashing out. You don't lose control or compunction over yourself. However, you are literally watching someone tear away pieces of your heart.
And second question, I know we had discussed it previously, but Lucio's stigmata, did we say we would have that only be on 1s, or was it also 10s?
It was 10s as well.
Okay.
He is a bleeding mess, but it starts slowly. You initially wouldn't notice the small trickle of blood. It's just a drop here, and followed by his closest cousin and friend. And before you know it, you have a village of vitae leaking from various points.
While there are shadow tentacles flashing around.
Yeah, they're aimed and they're tactical. They are attempting to drive something that is within the wall from the wall. They're attempting to make sure that being, that energy, that presence understands that it is no longer wanted here. He is attempting to do the Gandalf, you shall not pass. But instead, it is the shadows themselves punching holes in your beloved. Because that's what the art is. That is what each piece of the art is. It is a piece of your heart. It is a piece of your soul. It is something that you have manifested into being that grants you succor and solace. And he is mindlessly, barbarically destroying it. He is tearing away pieces of you.
Lucio, what the fuck?
Lucio, focusing entirely on the spirit, just yells out, "If you think you can hide from me, you've got another thing coming." And he just continues.
All right. She's gonna slap him. So what else is she gonna do?
Well, no.
Oh, please tell me she has potence.
She does not.
Oh.
It's going to be much like getting slapped by a wet noodle.
Hey, now those things can hurt. Some people don't know what al dente actually is. Lucio, are you attempting to dodge, or are you focusing on driving the specter and spirit from your presence? Because if you are not attempting, there's no real need for her to roll, because you are stock standard still. The manipulation of the energies of oblivion require you to be still. So unless, of course, you shut things down and take to evasive maneuvers, she will connect.
No, she's definitely hitting him. He's focused entirely on getting that spirit out of here.
All right. So, would you be so kind of go ahead and roll your strength? Let's brawl, but your DC is not relevant.
I mean, my all one die.
Kick his ass, Seabass.
Right. Yay.
Hey, she did it.
Yes, she did. And what is Lucio's stamina? Because if it's anything less than 4, he will feel it. He will realize that he has been hit. And
3.
there's something about being sucker punched. Even if someone doesn't intend to hurt you in doing so, you did get blindsided. So emotionally, it's a shock. Emotionally, it's like, what are you doing? Can't you see I'm making the world free for us?
So after being smacked, I'm assuming Lucio almost like instinctively just shuts off the Oblivion sight and looks back at Miriam and just says, "What was that for?"
As I gesture to the wall, what the fuck?
Oh. The spirits are hiding from us, and one of them was hiding over in that painting. Sorry about the painting, by the way.
I think
Miriam
in the
is
car.
agitatedly tapping her foot.
You, Lucio, realized that while you were causing enough ruckus to wake the dead, you were not causing enough ruckus to not destroy the walls they were hiding in, to not destroy the artwork upon the walls they were hiding in, to not leave the place as if your name was the chattiest of all chads. And you were hopped up on Red Bull and Fireball, and your girlfriend just left with your best friend.
Look, Miriam, I'm sorry, but there's no way in hell that thing is allowed to stay here. I'm sorry, but I'm getting rid of it. And was Lucio aware of if he actually got rid of it or not, or?
Well, with the shutting down of Oblivion site, it's the results are unknown.
Okay, good question though, because Hestia never dropped Sentient Scene. While this is going on, did she see the spirit he was started swinging at?
As far as Heshia's senses were concerned, Lucio lost his ever-loving mind. Whatever he is on, whatever he was doing, is it's nonsensical. There's no sense or relevance to it. You know what you felt, and you felt the absence of souls. You felt the absence, and you still feel the absence of the other side. You know that it's there. It always is. But in this particular moment, there isn't. And as that thought is slowly beginning to finish in your mind, you realize that much like Blakeney, there is a very good chance that Lucio may be going mad. You never met a Lasombra who was not somewhat touched. And while the reputation has always been that it is the Malkavians that were quite mad, you remembered, or remember as the case may be, what it was like when Lucio and Blakeney were up in arms against each other. The sheer ferocity and savagery that they unleashed on each other being of such a significant level that even as both were disembodied specters of shadow, the sounds of large predatory animals escaped. The damage they caused to the area around them, even as they were incorporeal shadow, was inestimable. And not for nothing, if it looks like a duck and walks like a duck and quacks like a duck, there's a very good chance that it is in fact a crow acting like a duck. You know, the fruit doesn't fall too far from the tree after all.
Yeah, so she's giving him a bit of side. She doesn't want to completely discount what he's saying, but she's giving him a bit of a side eye. Okay, either way, we should probably leave. We should probably go back to Sophia's and tell her what the hell is going on and sort this all out. Miriam, I am so very sorry. I know this was important to you, and I don't know if it's replaceable, but how about this? I have some artwork at Aaron's, and it's very, very old, and it's not really my style. Maybe someday I can invite you over and you could look through it.
You know how I mentioned dragons and their hordes?
You mentioned something of the sort, yes.
Art is her horde, basically, is what I'm getting, and you just ruined a piece of her horde that was irreplaceable. So, sorry is one thing, but there was not enough sorry. Make it better, I'm guessing?
Not really, no.
Okay, but still, how about we get him out of here in case nothing else gets wrecked? And we never let him forget it. And
Look, I'm
try to
sorry
replace something.
about your art, but I think we're glossing over the fact that apparently these ghosts can hide from us so that we normally can't see them, even if we have the ability to. They are still spying on us, and they are still here.
Which is
How are any of you not okay with that?
I
Going
didn't
with
say
Sophia's 'cause it's
I was
safer.
okay with
No.
it. She's going to turn around and look at the wall. How damaged is the wall itself?
The wall is not the issue. It's you can always, plaster that back over. Hell, you can even tear the wall down and put drywall back up and paint back over it. It is the artwork on the wall. That series of re-envisioned Disney princesses melded the realities of the stories as told by Hans Christian Andersen and the Brothers Grimm and several other oral traditions, melded into the genre most fitting of those tales. The princesses just desserts, the sleep, the forever sleep, the poison being ingested. All of those things were considered in the construction, sketching, and designing of those pieces. And much like all of the many flashes in the pan, the hot crazes of the dancing all night, the bell-bottom suits, the rich Corinthian leather, all of those things were products of their time, and those pieces were products of your time. In those moments, channeling those exact emotions, getting back to that exact place, making those exact leaps of logic is something that you will never do again. Each piece is like an exorcism of a thought, of a insanity. Each piece is a unburdening and birthing into the world something that, well, no one else in that moment could, even though some of the pieces have been copied by other artists, and some people have decided to modify certain pieces or been inspired by those pieces. That piece will never again be.
I turn back and gesture both of them out. And then on the way out, I'm going to probably call, I guess not the accountant, but her shop manager, and have her call all the clients for the next couple of days and reschedule because there's going to be construction that needs to be done. We can't see any clients. And I'm talking, Lucio can hear this. He can definitely hear how irritated she is, because at this point it's not just her artwork, it's her revenue stream too.
And speaking of annoyed, and speaking of revenue streams, as a member of the Famiglia, as a member of the Hecata, there are certain things that, well, are just too good of an opportunity to pass over. There are certain realities. Everyone else believes that the Hecata are simply a clan. Most people believe that they are just a clan. Most people don't realize that they are a sect unto themselves, each a scion of the line of Cappadocius, each of them an offshoot or a bettering or a focusing in on an area of death, whether that death is financial, physical, mental, emotional, or a mix of all of the above. Each family is a clan unto themselves. Many people try to downplay it and say that they are bloodlines, that they are offshoots, that they are, for lack of better words, mutations of a theme. No. Perhaps initially, perhaps hundreds of years ago, perhaps even several decades ago, maybe, potentially, for some of them. However, the truth of the matter is, in this time, in this day and age, in this year of our Lord 2022, they are full clans unto themselves. Their differences small enough to be overlooked by the layman, but huge enough to be the reason why several cities have fallen into disrepair. Their differences enough to be the reason why no one in any of the families is truly allied with any of the others. Their mutual continued existence is why they tout the banner of Hecata. Their mutual continued existence is the reason why they don't let those secrets out into the world. Because if anyone found out that there was an ever waging civil war, a bloodless one, happening within the Hecata, they'd be prey to the Ashira. They'd be prey to the One Kwai. They'd be prey to the Tower, the Anarchs, or even the Sword of Cain. Because a house divided cannot stand. Yet, they are in fact divided. Because there is a battle for the throne. There is a battle to be the pater of paters, to be the leader of leaders, to be the family that is in fact not just the face of the clan, but is the clan as a whole, is the sect as a whole. And in the safe room, sitting there, calling, whispering to her like a second external beast, is a piece of the first city with enough potential power to act As a god machine unto its own self, it calls to Sophia amongst other supernatural entities. It calls and whispers and does not stop because it is there. It is close enough to be touched, close enough to be held, close enough to be utilized and wielded like a sword and shield. What is it that you do?
Well, it'd be rude not to answer, wouldn't it?
So, taking to the stairs, mounting the stairs, gliding along gracefully as if you are, in fact, a Disney princess, as if you are mounting a mountain with the birds and the raccoons and the deer all singing along in your sway, which surprisingly is not that far off what's happening. As Sophia is drawing closer, the souls and specters that abound and abide following in her wake, drifting lightly in and out of the periphery, staying close enough to inhale the perfume of death that covers her undead skin, to be in the presence of all of that power that she wields, that control, more so than the power itself. It's the difference between a blazing forest fire and a hearth. Sophia is a hearth, a controlled fire bent towards your purpose. And the lodestone is the fire that she's going to turn into something else. She's going to utilize all of that nuclear radioactive energy. As she eases into the safe room, the cold wash of its security hits her. There is the feel that she's grown accustomed to, the feel of the specters and souls and spirits and ghosts that always abound and abide. But when the door opens, there is a cool breeze because the room is designed both technologically and mystically to be a shutoff, to be a vault for things that are inside. And sitting there on the table in the far corner is the lodestone itself, still in its box, still in its FedEx box, still there. But there's something ominous about that package. There's something ominous about that box. For most, for Sophia, it's candy and there's no one to stop her from indulging. What does she do?
Let's go open that box.
As the well, though not perfectly crafted wood box inside slides free of the FedEx box, she looks over. It's almost as if someone purposely designed it so that it would leak energy and act as a beacon to others. Having had experience with such protections, it immediately stands out that it was well done, but clearly by someone who was not, or done purposefully so that the person who did design it would be a target. And the name still written on that little small scrap of paper, Rickmod Dumitrescu, slides free as she opens it. And inside is the lodestone. It is a beautiful piece of ancient technology because that's what brickworks were. That's what making bricks were. It changed how society developed. No longer having to scrounge for caves or natural recesses or coves. The creation of bricks changed how civilization developed. And it was and still is a technology that many take for granted. And here's a piece of the first city, the first urban environment, the first home for kindred. Because kindred have always been creatures of cities. They have always been creatures of where the sheep and cattle are safely corralled from other predators, allowing them to move amongst them like one of the flock, like one of the herd. The moment that Sophia touches the lodestone directly, there is a shiver that races through her spine, causing it to double and triple in size almost instantaneously. Her gaze filled with a starry night sky, she can hear the sound of blue pines in the distance.
Well, that's not good, but I know I'm not there.
She manages to hold on to her wits, and in doing so grounds herself to where she is. She knows part of the assistance is the safe room, that she can't be completely taken from this moment unless, of course, she willingly does so. She has to invite it in. She has to feed it with her presence. Knowing the sheer unlimited potential in her hands, what is something that Sophia is attempting to do?
She will whisper to it in what she believes is its language. And, I don't know what her exact words would be, but some sort of praise, telling it its home, the things they could do together, just evil, crazy, batshit shit like that.
An appeasement, a taming the beast by being present, by using your voice and pouring meaning into the absence of logical thought. Taming the untamable is Sophia's goal. As she whispers, and she gets accustomed to the feel of all of that energy and power vibrating through her, and as she allows her conscious thought to exit, and her unconscious wishes and wants for power, for authority, for control, for revenge, for all of the many things that would make an unlife worth living. She grows accustomed to the feel of forever in her hands, because that's what the lodestone is. It is a piece of forever. Because while many believe that the first city had been destroyed and been lost to time, which is not untrue, it still exists. There are many Hakata philosophers and leaders of thought that say that it exists now. That unlike the vast majority of things that have a shadow version of themselves, that Enoch's shadow of itself is actually Enoch. It has been shunted from this side of the shroud into that side of the veil. It exists there in a multiplicity of realms, both Oblivion, both Arcadia, both the Deep Umbra, all at once. It is a anchor point to much of the supernatural world, yet most don't have the strength to ever go that deeply into either place to find it. Most people don't have the strength to withstand all of that pressure, all of those souls, all of that energy. And yet, in her hand, she has proof that those ideas, as crazy as they are valid. They exist. It exists, and there's a way to bring it into our world, to bring it into this version of Forever Night. Or at least it did. And while you're whispering and cajoling and watching as the power washes over you. You attempt to maintain an awareness on your surroundings or awareness on where you actually are.
Of course.
Excellent. Would you be so kind as to go ahead and roll your resolve plus oblivion? There's sometimes when being really good at what you do is just as problematic as being not good enough. And in this moment, Sophia is very good at what she does. Very good at understanding the ebb and flow of life and its full line, including all that is death. And she is aware that the corners, the edges of her vision are being pulled, and she can see a rolling hill of sandy vistas with loose scrub grass growing at the edges, sprouting through the desert night sky. And there in the distance, at the edge of every periphery for her, is the encroachment of a city, a dark stone place that is lit by torchlight. She hears the faint call of lupines far closer than they should be. And she realizes that the stone is leading her home. She is aware that outside of her window, which she can't see but is somehow aware of, that the stars have changed overhead. She is aware that the room in which she inhabits isn't where it should be, in time or in space. She realizes that the more that she attunes to the lodestone, the more and wider its circle of effect might become. The more people will know who she is, where she is. Just like every opening, every window works two ways.
She will hold the stone up at eye level with one hand, assuming that it's not super heavy here.
No, it's not super heavy.
She will bite into her wrist with the free hand and force some of her vitae into the stone or onto the stone, as the case may be.
And they say lightning can't strike twice. In less than a week, Sophia is party to and part of another attunement happening, as she gives a sacrifice of her own vitae to attune to the power of the lodestone. With all that may presage, it is 54 after the hour. Let's take a quick 10-minute here, and we'll be right back. Alright guys, how we doing?
I am here.
Here's
Likewise.
Present.
Back.
Alright, sounds like a plan. So, in our last few moments, there was a scene unfolding that there's very little chance that in the attunement that anyone with oblivion, aspects, blood sorcery would not feel the moment they step off the elevator on Sophia's floor. There are some things that can't be hidden. There are some powers and some events that are beacons. There are flashes in the night. There are lightning racing across a starless sky. And the connection with an old blood to the first city. Because, again, the Hekata, each bloodline, each clan unto themselves, are all scions of very old blood, the Cappadocians, which, as many people constantly forget, were one of the originating clans. Way back in the dark ages of time, the Cappadocians existed in a similar state to the Nosferatu, present but unseen, just beneath the feet, usually of power, because the tombs were hidden beneath the cities. They were in the out-of-the-way places, and these are the places where the Cappadocians thrived, where they kept their libraries, where they kept their sanctums, where they pushed the boundaries of all good, reasonable sense. Many of the older kindred believed that fear of the dead was fear of the Cappadocians, and with good cause. It was passed down to nearly every living thing, because they dabbled in the full spectrum of life, because they don't see death as the ending of life, but a continuation of that existence, that the immortal soul continues in another state. And all of the scions of Cappadocians, all of the scions of the Hekata Famiglia, carry that old blood in various intensities. So as that connection is made, and those with senses and feelings and the attachment to all of the myriad of possibilities, when they step off the elevator, there is a feeling that can best be described as hell come to earth, as if someone is walking over your grave, as if there are worlds opening like the bud of a flower before you all.
Oh, that can't be good.
You said a question, because I know you said which things people, if you have these things, you'd feel it. What about somebody that has multiple of those things?
You know what it's like to hit your funny bone? Imagine that all over your body.
She just gets to a stop in the hall. She fucking didn't. No. Oh, fuck. And takes off down the hall towards Sophia's house.
Lucio follows suit.
And while that's happening, Sophia, Miriam, go on.
Miriam's just super confused.
Wait,
just super confused.
Does Miriam
No,
not
Miriam
have
does.
Alphax?
No.
Wait. All this time I thought you did.
No.
She is very much
I
a
don't.
muggle.
Yes.
I haunted Muggle, because there are various spirits that will refuse to leave Miriam alone. Various memories from those spirits that refuse to leave their forethought. Various moments, a red dress, spinning, twirling like a top, awash in all of the glory of being adored, awash in that moment of being seen for the first time. It's an interesting feeling that Miriam herself has never really had. She's always managed to stand out without standing out. She's always been, for lack of a better word, a Doogie Howser when it comes to expressing herself artistically. When she's neck deep in creating a piece of art on someone else's skin that they will live with for the remainder of their existence. When embracing that freedom that comes from expressing themselves, they are in their element. And so that orgiastic feeling of being seen, of having been invisible, is nothing that quite makes sense, as something that they've grown accustomed to, but that empowering moment of being seen, of being adored, of being loved and cherished by this being that is beyond all kin to express what they mean, is something that doesn't leave her every moment that she has alone. And when powers are swirling, she knows what it's like in that moment to be seen for the first time, that just awash in all that he was and granted you, in that dress, in that dance, in those eyes out there in the darkness. But outside of that, no aspects, no blood sorcery, no oblivion. Just the spirits that won't leave her be. And Sophia, as you attune with this piece of ode, as you attune with this symbol that life is a ever-expanding, endless line, that death is just another facet of it. Give me one NPC that you've thought of in that moment as the power is eking and leaking into you, as the vibrations from it grow in intensity and it becomes more part of who and what you are. What NPC's name, what PC's name crosses your mind?
Well, that's pretty easy, as she considers this all a means to an end and a way to increase her own personal power. At least until this war is over, she wants nothing more than the complete and total obliteration of anything that is Woseek. He did destroy my grandma.
Do you think Woseek? Do you think Seek? Or do you think Don Castiglione?
Probably Don Castiglione, because that's kind of the way we've discussed him most. So I think that's kind of the thing that's foremost in her brain when she thinks about him now.
There is always we keep going back to that moment that you open up a view, a camera, a connection, a small little thin thread, a way out, a way towards the other person. It harkens back to the idea, and stare not into the void lest the void stare back into you. That whole aphorism, and it harkens into, when you dig a grave for your enemy, it's best to dig two. It is very much that. And as the thought in the background, that endless fight to make sure that no facet of Don Castiglione exists, to make sure that the vendetta has been fully realized, that the memory of your grandmother, that all that she could have been, all that she was, has been properly avenged. You touch something, and not the stone in your hand, not the vitae coating your limb. You touch something dark and all too warm, with eyes as nearly dark as black itself, the very soul of it, and a mustache grown to hide scars along the upper lip, a salt and pepper hair, and a face surprisingly young for all of the stress and trauma that they've existed and lived through, all of the violence that they've wreaked. And for a brief moment, as you're staring at the stone and whispering to it and attuning to it, you see Don Castiglione. You see various images of him. The hair, the mustache, the eyes. You see his rise to power in a montage of violence that would make Tarantino lose his ever-loving mind and not do anything else except for this man's biography in several different parts, over several different movies, over several different decades. You see a life that is very much the stuff of legend, as deals are made, enemies are laid low, and their power is used against themselves to make sure that the Castiglione's power, their reach, their effect grows like cancer beneath the surface. First in usurping their namesake, the Puttanesca, and then with sights on becoming the family of families, becoming the head, not just the figurehead, not the face of the Giovanni, but the Giovanni themselves. Through marriage, for years, there has been a plot and a plan, and it slowly begins to unveil itself, and you're almost able to pick up the details to find where to shortcut it and make sure you can trace it back and in the line once and for all, and then you're safe. Room door opens. Hestia and Lucio there, with Miriam looking perplexed, a small bit of joy dancing at the corners of her eyes.
I knew you were fucking crazy, but this is fucking crazy. You realize what you're doing right now? There's like a beacon, like Hollywood sign, bright, flashing over your fucking head right now. Everybody in the city could probably feel it, and they're probably zeroing in on this power right now. I hope you have enough Silvios to fight every fucking body.
Lucio walks over to the stone and tries to close the box.
It's in her hand.
Lucio's gonna do it anyway.
No, the stone is in her hands. It's not in the box.
Then he's gonna try and take the stone and put it back in the box.
I thought when he said that, he was going to close the box on her hand with the stone.
I mean,
That's exactly what I was thinking at first, too.
I think you got lost in the wrong movie. This is not Pretty Woman. Sophia. Silvio is clearly waiting on your order or your notion. You're not sure exactly when he followed you in or why he was, but he's actually close enough that if things were to turn sideways, you're pretty sure that there'd be quite a big mess to clean up. There's nothing in his hand. He's not standing menacingly, but the fact that he was quietly present through this speaks to several facets of his persona.
Splitting off a bit of her attention from the task that she's trying to accomplish, she will, I guess, be semi-cognizant of being yelled at and that Lucio is coming to basically ruin the whole thing, so she will hiss to Silvio in Italian, "Not yet."
He nods, and you all can hear loud, "Sure thing." So, everybody had a good night, I take it.
Still looks at Silvio. I know she's like your god or whatever, but how could you let her do this?
Do what? Look over the stone?
You don't be stupid, Silvio. You know what the fuck she's doing.
Yeah, I know what she's doing. She's inspecting a very dangerous thing that you all brought.
No. She's attuning to it. She's gaining power from it. It's bullshit.
And in our present situation, where you all, as soldiers in this thing of ours.
The fact that it belongs to a very dangerous fucking person who wants it back.
And who we made an agreement to return it to in exchange for killing Daria.
Not for nothing, but when do we do that?
While we were out.
If he has had enough and using hilarity will try to snatch the lodestone out of Sophia's hand while Silvio's distracted with Lucia.
So while all of this is happening, and while all of the coterie members have returned and are standing in the Faraday cage that is in fact the safe room of Sophia's abode, of Sophia's haven, a haven that has been used by multiple visiting dignitaries of the Hakata for decades, going back to the mid-20s, almost 100 years ago. All of the souls that are waiting at the threshold, growing greedier and hungrier. And the flash of light that is the energies of the old blood running through Sophia's dead veins. And that piece of impossibility that is the first city. The city where all things went wrong, as they tend to do. And where the population of Kindred exploded into something more than an oddity of nature. Elsewhere in the city, with such portents happening, with the feel of danger encroaching happening, having spent the bulk of the day lining all of the ducks in a nice, neat line, Mama Hugo sits down with Maria Tori, the public head of the other half of the Castiglione and Tori line, her niece by several measures and cousins by several others. And they have a conversation. They have a conversation that changes which of them is in fact the head bitch in charge. A conversation which changes which of them will assume the vacated throne that was Wojcik's seat at the table. A conversation which sets into motion the reorganizing of the Castiglione Tories. Because while everyone knows that they are dirty, and by dirty they are criminals, it's a job, it's an application, they are engaged with and involved with nearly every facet of making monies illegally. And yet, they also very publicly have legal enterprises to which their name is attached. They have several ways to divert attention from the apparent criminality of their core businesses. There are ways to justify their influx of cash at various periods of the month. They have ways to properly wash all of their funds. And much like any multinational corporation, the Castiglione Tories is in fact a business with several layers between the head of the organization and their street soldiers. And all of these things are being laid out, laid for view, discussed and divvied up. A reorganization, a shift of their business. Small things, a small thing in the grand scheme of things, a simple conversation, but an illuminating one for those who have eyes and ears. A another straw on the camel's back. And as Sophia makes connection and opens a doorway between this world and the next, and as that doorway is left drifting in the breeze because that moment was broken, cut short by all of the arrival of the coterie, all of the candles and all of the lights in the building where Mama Hugo and Marie Tori are meeting go out. Guns are drawn, knives are revealed, and people attempt to act on their worst impulses when the unknown happens, the surprise happens. And for a brief second, Woodseek's voice can be heard coming from everywhere and nowhere. It ain't gonna be that easy. You pull one over on me, but I got the rest of forever. And miles away, as that hole is torn in this world, and Wojcik reaches across, taunting purposefully to annoy and potentially destabilize the growing restructuring of his company. There is a group of 5 individuals who've traveled roughly between the 5 of them 675 miles to be here, to be in the western suburbs of Chicago, to be in a place that, well, for all intents and purposes, doesn't actually exist. It's not part of Chicago, but it so very much is. Orland Park, while west, is considerably south of the city, but it's also one of the larger, more affluent areas. So much so that 5 people meeting in a park near a sky trampoline zone and not far from a golf course doesn't stand out. But for those with eyes and ears, 5 individuals who have come from as far as they have, who bear no signs of death about them, who are not masquerading as alive, but in fact are very much just that, very much alive. Daring to meet in the dark, in the night, with all that power floating in the air, speaks very ill of their intentions. Most of them bear scars, or tattoos, or a combination of the two in various designs. Some would say that are tribal, some would say that they've got into fight with a very angry blender. But they each, rough and tumble, dressed in well-worn leathers and jeans, 2 in suits. And they begin to discuss how best to retrieve the anchor, how best to make up for their associates' failure in the past, how best to ensure whomever and whatever has access to the anchor does not live the week out. It's a simple plan, and as such, can be easily avoided, averted, or sundered, save that these people have come a very long way to achieve their goal and have every intention of not leaving without achieving their goal. And while all of that is happening, and while all of the players take their positions at the wings of the stage just behind the curtain, we turn our gaze back to the coterie. In this moment, there are several things that you shouldn't do. Everyone knows you don't eat the yellow snow. You don't touch the 3rd rail. You don't tug on Superman's cape. And you don't express all of that emotional energy around something that can and does magnify the sundering of things. You don't interact with such dangerous things up close and personal without protections in place. And right now, the coterie does not have any of those protections. Their emotions are in the air and swimming about them, knocking against one another as Lucio's hand on the lodestone and Hestia's hand on the lodestone and Sophia's hand on the lodestone magnifies that. Miriam, as the only person not actively touching the lodestone, would you be so kind as to roll your wits and insight? If you for each miss from a DC 3, there will be a most graphic and visible result.
Sweet. Sorry.
That is a very good thing. Fate has it in for you. Dancing in that moment with all eyes on you, knowing that the fate of your future rests on this performance. You were all but heartbroken with the idea that he may not be here, but then he walked through the side door and stood there in the wings watching you. You were lifted several hundred feet above the ground, not falling or crashing on the rocks below, but soaring with him, soaring with his adoration, soaring with his true need and want of you. And of the two, the want is the most important part, because this is a person who is continental. He is European, that Irish accent that makes him sound like all of the covers of all of those trashy novels you've passed by in the airport and at the library and hell, even at Walmart. He is that dashing hero which will take you out of your life of drudgery, who will change your existence. And as those thoughts, as that touch of the other washes across you, you realize that everything grows in intensity with touch. 3 members of your coterie, 3 members of your chosen family are touching that thing. You are sure that's where Hestia is going, even though she blinked out of existence for a split second, just like she did at the church when she entered Woldseek. You are sure that them all touching that stone at one time will have catastrophic results. As Lucio is reaching to move it into the box and Hestia blinks out of sight with it in Sophia's hand, you have one action to avert the catastrophe that is about to happen. What is it that you do? Not say, what is it that you do?
Oh dear. I will grab the nearest thing that I can grab and throw it at Silvio, because he's a relatively big target. Stop them!
Alright, so we'll give that a +1. Hearing Miriam scream, stop them, as she tosses one of the mini burner phones that are in the safe room at Silvio. Doesn't buy you all an additional action, but as all your hands are preparing to collide and connect with the lodestone, is anyone going to attempt to act on that fear wafting off of Miriam?
I think Miriam gets scared. Is gonna like hold her hand, like just like almost touching, but like not touching, and realizing, yeah, the last time they touched the lodestone, multiple of them, it didn't go well.
Sophia will do her damnedest to try to soak all these emotions in and focus them through the stone towards her purpose.
Lucio.
Lucio is still gonna try and get it out of her hand.
All right. That being the case, Lucio, that would be a strength and brawl, and strength and larceny, because you're just taking it, you're not trying to clobber anybody with it or club anyone with it. So, and while that is happening, being hit by a burner phone, being hit by a phone isn't the best thing possible, but it's not the worst thing, especially when you've been shot or stabbed or beaten or otherwise fed upon by kindred. It's one of those, like, are you fucking serious? What did I do to you? And while that's happening, and while Silvio's asking, why are you hitting me with a phone?
Help them!
Sophia, would you be so kind as to roll your intelligence and occult, and roll as high as you possibly can. Because you are corralling the spilled over emotions. You're corralling the energy floating, dancing in the air. You're utilizing it to stab through space, time, and reality to achieve a goal. And that goal is the sundering of everything that was, is, and has been connected with Don Castiglione. Lucio, you reach for the stone, and there's a lot of flowery ways to say it. There's a lot of different ways to describe the electric charge that rockets up your fingers through your arm and into your heart. But all of those ways would fall short of just simply the pain that causes you to fall to your knees. All of those would fall short of 1 second you are as dead can be. You are as kindred as the next undead monster in this room. And in the very second your fingers are just about wrapping around and you see Hesha pull up short her hand, hovering over the stone, you are smacked across the soul with the very definition of pain, knocked to your knees. And you're breathing. And you're sweating. And the vitae pouring out of your wounds, your invisible stigmata wounds, smells very much like blood, not like vitae. It doesn't have that melon sweetness to it. It has that undertone of copper, that salty, chip-like essence that is the life juice of every other entity save kindred. And Silvio's still trying to figure out, why the fuck are you throwing phones at me? Of all things, you gotta throw a bat, a gun, something. A phone? Are you serious? A fucking phone. And Asher, you see it happen. You see the charge, the bright flash of invisible light that's visible only because you do have a aspect and you are attuned to the mystical, as it races from the lodestone through Lucio and out into the world. You watch as Sophia's eyes gray over as if she's peering into that world between worlds, not quite fully into the realm across the shroud, but not fully in this one. You watch as, for the briefest of moments, and seems as if she's flickering in and out of reality. And then you all, through the pain, through the realization that something is happening, hear the sound of wolves. Not lupines, not the big, deep, human lung-sized approximation of a wolf's howl. No, you hear wolves. Wolves that are the size of lions. You hear actual quadrupedal predators in the dark. So comfortable are they in their hunting range that they are calling out to one another to announce their location. Damn the prey. Let them know that we are about. Damn the humans gathering around their campfires against the dark. Let them know that we are about. Hunting is plentiful enough that there is no need for stealth. And for the first time in a very long time, Sophia, you're actually tired. Not mentally fatigued, but physically drained. Feels as if while you never have been the physical sort to go running marathons or climbing mountains just because they are there, it feels as if you have done just those sorts of things. Your muscles ache. There's a slight sheen of a tinged sweat at the base of your spine. Your brow has a little moisture on it. And you are sure, as you do not breathe, and that the sun will destroy every facet of you, that something immense has happened. Something has crossed over. Some energy has been set free into the world to achieve your aims. Every connection of Don Castiglione is now in pure mortal danger.
Awesome.
I just have a question, storyteller. I see that hunger too. Lucio's kind of bleeding.
Yeah.
Is that?
Yeah. You're hungry at a buffet. What do you do?
Yeah. Wait, hold on. What is everyone's hunger at?
2.
Sophia?
4 now. No, I'm joking. It's just at 1.
Jesus Christ, don't scare me like that.
I'm too busy to eat you right now.
So, Hestia, having heard the wolves, looks at Miriam. You heard that this time, right? You heard that just now? Wolves?
Did I hear that, or was that only for people within?
Oh no, you heard
that. Okay. I just wanted to make sure, since I wasn't like in the act of almost touching the stone. Yeah, sounded like wolves.
Sounds like there's a lot of them, and we barely took out a sick one last time. Ooh, not gonna be safe here. I hope you have silver, Silvio. And then sniffing the air, kind of down at Lucio. What do you smell like that?
I don't know. But my head is fucking reeling from that shock.
How bad does Lucio look? I mean, like, scattered, bleeding.
He's bleeding as if someone affixed a crown of thorns atop his head. He's bleeding from the center of his palms as if someone drove nails through them. His side, underneath his shirt, you can see a well of blood as if someone pierced through his side with a spear to hasten his death. And even though you can't see anything at his feet or in his shoes, you are sure that they are awash in blood as if someone drove a nail through those as well. To mix and make things worse is the salty sweat, which only thinly vitae tinged, pouring beneath all of these founts of blood. And no, what's coming from those wounds are not vitae. They are, in fact, 100% blood. And as pale as he is, you are sure that that blood is coming from him. He looks as if he is going into shock because of blood loss.
Okay. All right then. I guess Mary is the medic. Can you help me get him out of there? Someone.
Lucio tries to get to his feet, but stumbles, almost collapsing.
Lucio will grab him, and under the guise of carrying him out, she'll move him, but the whole time she's like sniffing along his forehead.
Oh, it's the good stuff. It is. Oh,
Delicious.
it is so delicious. It is the sort of thing that if it was a dish of food, you would have the chef coming to your table to explain how the artisanal bread was made in-house, starting early this morning, where the sous chef and the baking assistant came in to hand knead the dough necessary for this bread, and how it's an old world recipe that has been passed down orally for generations. Why it's not a publicly usually sold bread, and that's the reason why it's so fluffy on the inside with that light flake, and it crunches you so loud you can hear it when you squeeze the bread, and yet it's still just moist enough that it doesn't tear or flake away. It's light and airy. Small hint of sweetness due to no added sugar, but simply because the ingredients are made so fresh.
Poor Lucio.
Oh, it's so hard not to lick his forehead.
And inhaling that delicious blood, you smell Arsenio. You remember what it's like to have a second time young, strong individual willing to apply everything they have towards your pleasure. In that scent, you smell, as funny as it is, Don Castiglione. You can imagine what he was like as a young bull tearing his way through the criminal world as he made his bones and built his empire. In that sweat, there's a certain hint of delectable virility. That sort of masculinity that easily becomes toxic if viewed under the wrong or the right light. That willingness to do whatever it takes to achieve one's goal. That dedication to one's own aim. And there's a hint to Hestia that wants to destroy it, because in that scent is all those who pointed and laughed. A woman of her age, unmarried, choosing such an intellectual pursuit. A woman of her age, denying the opportunity of her future. She won't settle down. She won't wed. She won't produce children. And yet, it's still Lucio. All of that innocence of that person bravely standing across the table from this undead monster, asking after the missing, looking for those lost souls that no one seemed to care about. It's still Lucio, that same freshly dead corpse that just appeared after weeks of disappearance, suddenly back to question Hestia as if she might be one of the monsters that he could do something about. And while you are carrying, lifting, pulling, surprisingly strongly, getting Lucio out of this space, away from that lodestone, Sophia, you've never been this close to death before. And not because you are dying or you haven't dealt with spirit and soul from beyond or dealing with the soul and heart of oblivion. No, this is the death of all things. This is that heart of hearts, that center mass of oblivion itself. You're able to touch it, and the fatigue settling over you. And while yes, it is just weakness leaving the body, there's also the hint of something else. There's the hint that you are being used as battery and fuel for what's happening. The longer you hold on, the less of you there will be. The longer you focus, the more you pour into this now, the less of you there will be left. And you know that nature abhors a vacuum, and it will fill those moments, those vacuums, with whatever it can. And there is a doorway open between you and all that exists outside of this world.
He's dangerous, everyone out. I'm almost done.
Lucio tries to say something and then almost loses consciousness. So he's gonna shut up.
You guys killed a lot of people. You all have ended a lot of lives. You have driven many things beyond all semblance of this facet of life. One of those things, one of those beings, has never really left you, even though there is no corporeality to them. They have always remained close enough to enviously and gluttonously watch your existence, watch your lives, to plague you as often as they can. Now, that hasn't amounted to much because, well, there's only so much a soul that runs from all of the bureaucracies of the dead can do. But with this much energy bombarding and cascading off the walls, act now or forever hold your peace is the saying. Do or be done, and they choose now to do. As Hestia and Lucio are nearly to a door, Miriam torn between watching Lucio to help him to get him to stop bleeding, because there's no way that that amount of blood loss could do anything except for kill something that was alive. But Lucio's not alive, yet he very much seems to be showing all the signs of massive and immediate blood loss. He appears in the door. His height, a thing that in another time would have made him an immediate leader. He appears in the door, his windswept hair cascading down his back, and unlike the last time you all saw him dressed in his trench coat and tailored slacks, he is dressed as he was all of those many years ago, a true pirate of the realm, a man who made his way as best as he could, doing all that was necessary to do. He appears there in the door, his cutlass clearly naked in his hand, his shirt a thing of beauty for its time and now seeming déclassé and very much not what most pirates wear except for when they're going out on town. It was his shore clothes for a good time. His breeches, again, his shore clothes for a good time, hugging every curve of his thigh, tucked into his boots to keep them from, well, making a mess of things. Not every place had the planks and sidewalks necessary, so you'd had to walk in the muck and mire. And his shoes, his boots, are those that, well, they were handmade, of course. And while they're new bugged, they've been properly sealed with wax to keep most of the stain work off of them. And his eyes empty sockets that just go on and on. His bright eyes no longer there. Instead, in their place, the endless dark of a soulless heart. Yeah, I thought that you could get away with doing what you did to me, which I probably would have taken, but you killed my child, or you killed my descendant, and for that, you will pay.
So he was just talking to, like, Hess, or he's talking to Hess, Lucio, and whoever's behind him.
He's talking to all of you, and it's clearly he has every intention of using his cutlass to make sure that you all pay.
Hess looks kind of back over her shoulder at Silvio. Man with a knife! And tries to duck around and under him with Lucio to still get out.
Here's the thing, you two are closer to him, and Lucio's no small man. So there's back and there's forward, and either way, that presents the opportunity. And that opportunity is to drive that cutlass through whatever there is of you. Starting with separating the head from the shoulder, and then maybe the arm from the torso. And, well, you know, venting his anger that way. But as Silvio tries to close, you all are between him and the target. You are between him and the dread pirate Nash. Now, Miriam, hearing that voice, hearing it caress that small portion of you that has been haunted all of these weeks since their passing. And Sophia, hearing that brogue, what is it that you all are doing? We know that Ash has been taking immediate evasive maneuvers and yelling for Silvio, man with knife. But what is it that you two are doing as Silvio attempts to close the distance to set up a protection between himself and Sophia?
How much is Lucio actually physically capable of in his current state?
He can
Not a whole
risk
lot,
it
probably.
all. He can do whatever he decides. Just remember, for every push, there's a pull.
All things considered, Bucket, he'll try and tackle him to the ground.
There we go.
He's not about to let someone cut Hestia's head off. Or Miriam's, for that matter.
But why not? It'll be fun. You guys have beaten death once, I'm sure you can beat it again, right?
Oh, I'm sure we could try and regrow our heads. Sure.
Right? Who needs a head?
Having finished her little impromptu made-up ritual here and realizing that it has done what it was going to do, she is going to put the stone back in the box. Having given everyone a warning that could be dangerous and telling them to get out. If they have not, that's on them.
Yeah, it is. It definitely is. It is always best to, what happened?
She will be mindful of where Silvio is and try to keep herself between him and the stone, because she realizes that telling him to get out is probably a conflicting thing of, or do you mean me? Or
Nah, you don't meet me, of course. Present company excluded, right, boss?
it was supposed to protect you, but then not protect you? I'm not sure which one takes precedence.
The pirate with the sword.
It's just a cutlass. He has to get close enough to use it. Luckily, Hesh just trying to get past him out the door. So that makes, them nice and close. And Lucio's changing things up to bodily attempt to tackle the ghost with the sword.
Oh.
Right.
In hindsight. In hindsight, that wasn't the best decision.
Yeah, think.
Part of me thought it was like a zombie thing coming back. No, never mind. Continue.
So, as we draw to a close with the fight, well joined with the spirit of the dread pirate Nash manifesting through the excess energies in the doorway being mostly open. So what, he wasn't personally invited. So what, but he's close enough to pick up the crumbs, and he's always been an opportunist when it comes to certain things. And this is an opportunity. This is an opportunity to make the pain that he has felt, because you all managed to do something that no one else could. You got him to feel and hurt, to consider something beyond himself for a brief moment, as the sun's rays crusted the rooftop's edge, and his childer, began combusting. And as the sun took from him, after providing for him in the first moment in several forgotten decades, something to care about outside of himself, it was the most excruciating moment that he has known personally. He's never had to think about anyone else. He's never actually considered anyone else. They enjoyed his presence because he enjoyed them. Not that they personally mattered. They were how he continued existing. They were, but they weren't. They were shadows in the play that was his life. But in that moment, as she was taken from him, he had to consider. And that's a hell of a thing to die with, knowing you were the cause of so much unhappiness, that your joy, your pleasure, your continued existence was a cancer upon the world. And all of that anguish and torment has manifested here in this moment. And as Sophia neatly and calmly places the lodestone back into the box and make sure that she is bodily between the lodestone and everyone else, with Silvio crossing the distance to do battle, with Lucio diving forward, and Miriam torn because there is the being, the person, the eyes, the feeling, the presence that has granted her, by extension, so many moments of pleasure, so many moments of joy, so many moments of being seen. And Hestia, there is the last innocent bystander, as it were, that has caused so much hell in your life, not because he was purposely attacking you, the coterie, or your businesses, but just by extension. He did not care to hurt you all. He was not attempting to cause so much chaos, but his touch, the touch of his efforts and all of his actions, caused a mountain of pain through the city. So many families losing their children, their daughters, their futures. So many kindred caught up in the effects of that rage given form as data was collected, and the masquerade literally was torn without anyone ever knowing that there was a mountain of information being compiled to destroy the kindred of Chicago. All of that information somewhere out there, traps set. And Lucio, there's something life-affirming about being so successful that you fail. You hit him squarely in the sternum, your shoulder digging into where the rib and stomach join, that space, that magic spot to take the wind out of almost anyone, and you go to bring your arms down to hook the legs, bringing the knees up so that they immediately go back. They immediately lose ground. No matter how strong they were, that double attack, that double focus is enough to bring most men, women, and every other semblance of living wall to the ground. But as you tumble through him, that space, meeting the lip of the stairs, scraping your skin as you do, you realize that that's not vitae that's hitting your nose. That's blood. Good, all-American, Chicago-based blood. You've been dead long enough and accustomed to your speed, your strength, and the fact that nothing can stop you, except for death in most cases. That the pain of scraping your skin, the pain of connecting with the floor, is a shock unto itself. You're not sure whether to laugh at the irony of it or dread what that might mean. You're bleeding. This is not vitae. This is not some spell designed to drive your hunger through the roof. No, this is actual torn, scraped skin. This is actual the bumps and bruises of living flesh. And only as you hit the ground do you realize that in the midst of all of this, you're actually quite hungry. Like hungry, not needing vitae, not needing blood. Your stomach is rumbling as you tumble against the top lip of the steps outside of the safe room. And Hestia, your speed, a thing to behold, as you duck one way and then the next, and the cutlass flashes out. It misses your neck, catches you across the torso. There's no opening of the dead skin. There's no bite of steel against your flesh. No, there's something far, far worse. Something opens inside you. Something deep down where the soul resides and where the thoughts play their games. Something tears there. you realize that that blade is something far more dangerous than just an edged weapon. It is cutting through pieces of the unseen you. It's cutting through pieces of the real you. It is not affecting the physical. It's affecting the soul of you. It's affecting the mind of you. It is affecting all of those things that, well, are as close to alive in you as could be. And Silvio's bulk and his strength means absolutely nothing against something that does that. Something that is incorporeal, yet having a corporeality to its visage. And with that conundrum sitting there before the coterie, I'd like to thank you all for a lovely episode, and thank you for a beautiful season. And I will see you guys next week for the epilogue. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.